Hi everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Tina. I am the Capability Building Coordinator for Connecting Up and TechSoup New Zealand. Connecting Up is a part of the Infoxchange group. Infoxchange is a not-for-profit social enterprise that has delivered technology for social justice for over 25 years. With over 100 staff across Australia and New Zealand, we tackle the biggest social challenges through the smart and creative use of technology. I'd like to welcome you all to the webinar, Gain a Clear Understanding of Your Organization's Data and Impact Using Power BI, which will be presented by Marcus Harvey and Anne Nguyen from Infoxchange. We'll start with a little bit of housekeeping. All lines are muted, so if you have any technical issues, please type it into the questions box on your webinar panel and I'll be able to assist you through there. If you have any questions during the session, please also type it into the questions box and Marcus and Anne will answer them in the Q&A section at the end of the webinar. Please note that your comments and questions will not appear to the entire group. If you are on a Wi-Fi connection and have multiple programs open, this can sometimes affect the quality of the audio and video of the webinar. If possible, please close all other programs to help you have the best experience. Please note that the webinar is being recorded and a link to the recording and the slides will be sent to you shortly after the webinar ends. Before we start, I'd also like to remind you that there will be a short survey at the end of the webinar. We'd appreciate it if you took a few minutes to provide us with some feedback. That's all from me for now. I'll pass it over to Marcus and Anne to get things started. Thanks, Marcus. Thanks, Anne.
Thanks so much, Tina. And look, we put our video on just for a second to say hi to everyone. We're really excited to be talking to you today because from our perspective, Power BI and helping your organisation understand what it does, its data and the information it collects is really, really important to getting value out of technology for you. What we're going to do is we're going to give you a little bit of an overview about Power BI. We're going to talk about why we think information is really important. We're going to do a quick demo of Power BI, so we'll show you how easy it is to connect in, to load data, and to get going with it, as well as some resources that you can use to teach yourselves. And we'll also talk about our top tips for Power BI when you're getting started, so that if you decide you want to go down this journey, you can understand how we think you should make it the best possible success that it can be. So I'm a senior consultant at Infoxchange and also lead the consulting services team. Anne is one of our Power BI specialists. So Anne will be the one doing the majority of the demo and the Power BI work, whereas I'll be talking about some of the why and what for, and also how you can get value out of it. So without further ado, we'll get going. As Tina said, please don't hesitate to put your questions in the dialogue box at the end, because we're really keen to make sure that we answer all of your questions. The first big comment, and this is a couple of years old now, but in the work we're doing with non-profits, we see this more and more, and so I just thought it was worth putting up. And that is, by 2015, organisations that build a modern information management system will outperform their peers financially by 20%. Now, we don't care so much about finances, we care more about impact. But what we're seeing is that this is very much becoming true these days, and non-profits that understand their data and can provide useful measures to the executive, to the board, and to staff on the ground have a bigger impact in terms of the change in the world that they're able to achieve. And one of the big reasons for this is that what we're finding is that overall the non-profit sector is under increasing pressure to do more with less. Government is looking for ways to reduce spending. The traditional sources of funding are becoming harder to get, and supporters are expecting organisations to be able to talk a whole lot more about what an organisation is doing and how they are achieving it. And that means that it's becoming more and more important for organisations to understand their data and to be able to analyse it and to be able to make sense of it. And for us, that's really where Power BI can come into its own. The real challenge that we find in much of our work with organisations is shown on this next slide, slide 4. And that is that the majority of non-profits, or most non-profits, don't have good information at their fingertips. Our last tech survey, which we released in February last year, there was just under 400 people responding to it, showed that about 50% of organisations reported that their core client management system isn't capable of capturing information about client outcomes. 49% of organisations reported they can't easily get the information and reports from their systems they require to inform planning, improvement and reporting. And again, a similar amount, 45% of organisations report that they don't understand the outcomes they achieve over time, nor how they vary by client circumstances and situation. And for us, being able to answer these questions is really important to helping the organisation thinking about what information is valuable, and also about, are they making the biggest possible impact for their activities and their funding that they can. From our perspective, it's really important to understand how your outcomes and your activities vary by client base. So if you're really good at achieving change and achieving improvement and achieving outcomes with clients that are, let's say, 15 to 19, or come from a particular cultural background, or particular family circumstances, knowing that means that you can communicate that to your stakeholders, and it also helps you understand where you don't have as big an impact. And then you can ask yourself the question, so what can we change to get a bigger impact in those areas? And it can also help you ask the question, how does our impact compare to others? And is there something I can learn from other organisations so that the efforts of my staff can be even more valuable and have a bigger impact? That's why we love information. That's why we think Power BI is really important. In terms of the types of information and what you can do, this next slide just gives you a high-level understanding of what you can easily put together within Power BI. And so this is a demo data set that we used from a Victorian government mandatory system. So it's a real system mandated in Victoria. We've done the same with federal and with New South Wales systems. And what it shows is the types of information and what you can start to do. So for instance, in the sheet here, we've put together just a quick dashboard showing total cases for the year 2014, how that breaks down by case type, whether you're working most with male or female, as well as the age range and the household type you're working with. This particular information set was primarily around family counselling services, and so that's sort of where that came in. You can see the referral source, mostly self, but police came into it. Funding source, as well as the outcomes by close stage come in, whether the goals were reached fully, goals were reached partially, no goals reached, or it's not applicable for particular areas, together with the total hours, the average hours per client, the travel hours involved. There's always a fair bit of travel if you're visiting people's homes, and all those sorts of things. From our perspective, this is really useful because it gives caseworkers and case managers the ability to understand, and the ability to start asking questions, and the ability to drill down and say, how do my outcomes change by referral source? How do my outcomes change by age range? How, and while it's not on here, how does the number of case hours and outcomes vary by staff member? Those sorts of questions are really useful to start to understand how can you share best practice within your organisation in an evidenced, fact-based way, rather than by just listening to those people and backing it up with facts to inform that conversation. I will make the comment that while this webinar is focused on Power BI and the dashboards are Power BI focused, there are a plethora of information tools out there. We're covering Power BI today because we think it's an easy tool to use, we think it's an easy tool to learn, we think it's very powerful, you can go a long way with it, and it's quite cost effective. If you're qualified as a non-profit within the Microsoft program, you can get it at a very cost-effective price. There's even a free license that will get you up and operational very quickly. But there's a whole range of other tools out there, whether it be Tableau or one of the others, that can also do these things at different price points. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about Power BI to start with. And the first thing is that for those that haven't looked at it, it's a really easy way that really links nicely with Excel and helps you analyze your data sets. But it really lets you collaborate within the Office 365 environment and within the cloud. The nice thing about Power BI is a really large proportion of organizations already use Office 365, and so it's very easy to give them access to Power BI and to allow them to start to analyze, slice and dice and share dashboards with them. And so that's a really useful thing. It means you haven't got a new information set or a new system you're going to have to roll out or teach staff. In terms of the main elements of Power BI, what I wanted to do was talk through each of the key areas really quickly, and then we're going to jump into some examples. So a Power BI site, and you can see one of those is the first concept I wanted just to briefly touch on, allows you to create dashboards that demonstrate particular information sets or query types. So you can create Power BI sites and share those through your organization. And the analytics slide I showed you 3 slides ago was a good example of a Power BI site, often with some sub-sites and sub-areas. It really just allows your organization to understand what the information is. One of the challenges we often find when we start working with non-profits is that everyone has slightly different counting rules. So for instance, how many clients does an organisation see within a particular year? It might sound like a really, or how many clients have an open case right at the moment, might sound like a really easy question. But if you don't have those counting rules well defined and thought through and shared in a standard way, everyone will get slightly different answers to that question. So for instance, is it just people with open caseloads or clients with open cases? After how long of non-response do you close a case? Are you cleansing your data to make sure that if you've got 2 clients in separate programs that are actually the same person but they haven't fully reported those details, that do you count them as 1 or 2? Those definitions around what is a client, what is an open case, what is active, are really important so that your organisation can speak with one about what your numbers are and about how you report, but also show that your counting rules align with the way your funder wants you to report things. Each funder often has particular rules for what's open versus what's closed, And getting those rules used in a standard way across the organisation is critical to making sure that you achieve your funding targets and making sure that you get the best possible impact from your effort. So those shared queries and the ability to define a query and share it with people across your organisation is a really important component of Power BI that allows you to do that in a consistent manner across your organisation, so you're all working off the same set of data. The other nice thing about Power BI is it allows you to schedule your refresh from different data sources. Power BI allows you to work with a whole range of data sources, from Excel, from SQL, as well as a whole range of other open source, MySQL, etc. And it allows you to import that data into Power BI so that your operational system isn't slowed down by data queries and analysis, but it also allows you to schedule that data refresh so it is up to date at any point in time, rather than having to wonder what date was the data set most up to date. One of the nice things when you start to get more advanced within your Power BI environment is that it allows you to join multiple data sets together with data definition sets, so that your management team and more educated users can start to query what data is available and understand and join data themselves, doing that data search, so you can link it to social index or CIFA data to understand how does it vary across geography by CIFA index, etc. Data is available within Power BI through mobile access, so that you can get access when you're out and about to your reports. And there is even natural language query facility, so that you can, for instance, say, give me a client count by case type, sorted by disadvantage within your demographic area. So some of those more advanced tools, if you've set up the information sets correctly, allows managers to interrogate data far more effectively than with just slicing and dicing tools. I did want to talk about the key Power BI components because that's part of understanding how you interact with Power BI, and it also gives you a background for what you're about to see in a minute. So with Power BI, you can connect and arrange your data from multiple data sets. Usually when organizations start working with Power BI, they will have data in a wide variety of data sets or data sources. It might be Microsoft Access, it might be Excel, it might be SQL, it might be a cloud system which has an open interconnect. I've got a MailChimp icon there which we can also connect in with. But the first thing is getting access to the data so that you can link it, connect it, filter it, source it, and produce reports. And that's really the first step within a Power BI dashboard development activity. The second step is then, once you've connected it and you've understood your data structure, is to produce reports and dashboards within Power BI. And we'll walk through that in some simple examples later on in this webinar. The nice thing about Power BI is, as you'll see, you can link your data, and there's a whole range of inbuilt charts, whether it be pie charts, line graphs, histograms, waterfall, funnel charts, etc., which will allow you to very quickly build useful information sets for people to understand what you're trying to produce and what you're trying to demonstrate in your reports. We recommend that you start with the base Power BI license, which is free for all Microsoft registered nonprofits, because that will get you up and running with Power BI. It will allow you to connect to your data sets, load it in, and produce some dashboards, understand where the value is at. Most non-profits will want a Power BI Pro license for sharing information with management teams because of the extra functionality and security features that offers. That's around $4.10 per user per month at non-profit pricing. But the nice thing is you can get started and even talk to managers about it without paying anything extra over and above your base licensing price if you're a non-profit qualified Microsoft organization. I want to talk through a demonstration now, and Anne's going to help me with that, just to show you how Power BI can easily connect in and to some Excel spreadsheets, which most people have, and get value out of it. I just wanted to articulate clearly, this demonstration uses dummy data. It is not real data. So you don't need to realize while there are staff names and client demographic details within the next series of the presentation, it is not real data. So I just wanted to reiterate that point for everyone. So what we're going to do is do a demonstration with specialist housing outcome data. For those that provide specialist housing services, you will be familiar with this data set. So we picked that because this data is in use across Australia for services, and it's comparatively easy to export into Excel if anyone wants to, and it should give you a sense of, irrespective of how your data is structured at the moment, what you can do and how it can work. So I'm just going to jump out of the demonstration and start with, first of all, this is an example of the demographics Excel spreadsheet. I'm just going to double check. Tina, I'm assuming you can see my Excel on the webinar now?
Yep,
Lovely.
we can see the Excel spreadsheet.
Just making sure that the transition worked. So this is just a very simple example of the Excel sheet that we're going to use in a minute and load into Power BI. You can see here it's got blank data. It's got, you know, the basic areas of, you know, the person, unique identifier, sex, age, range, and postcode, etc. A whole range of different things with the normal blank fields. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into a blank Power BI desktop. So this is completely blank, and Anne is going to start by talking us through how we will load that data set in and start to get value out of it. Thanks, Anne.
Thank you, Marcus. Power BI is a very versatile tool. It's simple enough for general use and complex enough for more powerful use data analysis. So what I will show you today is a very simple process. You get a very simple data set. You have a look at the data set, think about what you want to get in, and then build some graph from it. So first of all, I'm going to get some data. As you can see here, there are many connectors, but I will choose the simple one, which is a CSV file, which I will use a demographic CSV file that Marcus has just shown you. Once it loads in, I can see that it automatically detects all the columns in there. I load the data set in, and as you can see, it is loading the data set here. Once it's all done, all the fields will be displayed in this right-hand side column. If you want to have a look at the data set in Power BI itself, you can go to Data View. However, if you want to build some graph right away, it's okay in this report view. I want to make some analysis on my client's gender, for example, but I want it to be in pie chart. So I changed the visualization of it. I want to make an analysis on gender, and then the value would be counting of client's ID. However, the pie chart building does not really show much detail, so I will give it some detail label, which are the counts and the percentage of client by gender. However, that's not much function here, but I want to filter it by age range as well. So I changed the age range to filtering visualization. And for example, I can filter client from 36 to 48 years old, and gender. I can add in some 17 to 16, 15 to 17 years old client as well. So you can see it's a very quick demonstration of this. You can easily build those graphs.
Thanks, Anne. So I think from our perspective, the nice thing is that within, that would probably be 60 to 120 seconds, we've loaded a spreadsheet into Power BI. We've created a really simple visualization. We've done no pre-work, and all of a sudden you're starting to get a sense as to how easy it is to connect into Power BI and to get value out of it. What I want to do now is, I'm not going to bother saving that, is just move to a different example that we've created a little bit earlier. So this is exactly the same data set. We've just taken more than 120 odd seconds to create this. And what you can see here is the type of visualizations that you can start to create. So again, we haven't cleaned the data, so this is just straight out of the environment. We haven't sort of prettied it up for the demonstration, so you can see how it works in a real life situation. So you can see here we've got the males and the females. For this data set, it's looking at 510 different clients. If you wanted to, you can see that what we've done is we've actually joined 4 separate data sets together. We've got the demographic data set, which I've shown you earlier. That's linked through to a support periods data set of when support's actually being provided, and details about that support period, as well as with an outcomes data set that talks about what the difference is and what the outcome was for each of those group support periods. And just looking specifically, first of all, at the demographics data set, you can see here that we've drawn exactly the same starting base of males and females in terms of the count. But then we put a second, what I call the donut shape, looking at how that varies by age range. And we've allowed some filtering to say, just show me those in Australia, or just show me those that are both recognise themselves with an Indigenous status of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander. Or we can, for instance, sort it by or look specifically at just clients that come from Burnie or Hobart or a particular locality. And one of the nice things about Power BI is, as you can see, when I click on a particular area, it shows both just those clients who are from Burnie, as well as it gives you a comparative visualization of what proportion that is of everyone. And so it's just a nice way of keeping an eye on both. What I want to do now is just talk through some of the other data sets to give you an idea as to how what other visualizations you can develop. So one of the first ones we've done is an outcome feedback data set. So as part of the process, clients go through an initial assessment, a first review, a second review, a third review, and then their final ongoing review. And what we've done is we've showed how one of the particular outcome attributes or each of the 4 particular outcome attributes, sorry: managing money and personal administration, managing tenancy and accommodation, meaningful use of time, and motivation and taking responsibility, varies across that, along that timeline. Again, remembering that this is dummy data, if you like, so it's not real, but it's very useful for illustrative purposes. And so this first chart shows you how that varies across each of the different review cycles, and it shows you how it varies for each of those different attributes or outcome areas: money, accommodation, time, and taking responsibility. What it also allows you to do allows you to filter it only on particular years. So for instance, if you only want to slice it or dice it for a particular year, or you want to slice it by a particular Indigenous status, or you want to look specifically at a particular worker or a particular age range, what that then allows you to do is slice it in those areas. We find this really useful, for instance, of when clients want to ask themselves the question, so how do outcomes change just for clients who are male, or just for clients who are female? Or do I see a difference in the results we achieve if I look specifically at 18 to 20-year-olds, or I look specifically at 36 to 45-year-olds, or 56 to 59-year-olds, so that you can then start to understand potentially, are you getting a different outcome or having different results for each different clientele or demographic type? Or how do things vary by worker? So do some workers somehow achieve amazing results, and others are challenging to get to that ongoing review and getting that sustainability? Or, and if they do, is that because they were given easy clients, or is that because they've got great tips that they can share with others? So thinking through that, as well as the particular client circumstances, is really important. What it also gives is an ability to understand, particularly when you're starting to ask how do results vary by client type, is understand the presenting issues. Because one of the challenges we find is that when you start to analyze data and understand what the options are, you start to uncover the nuances and the differences and different life circumstances with clients, and making sure that's taken into account is really important. But also, these sorts of charts really help if you've got particular client target demographic types that your funder requires you to achieve. So for instance, if your funder requires you to hit a certain percentage of clients in an age range, or needs you to achieve a certain outcome result, tracking this over the reporting period, whether it be 3 months, 12 months, or 1 month, will help you understand how you're going against that, and making sure your funding not only stays or doesn't get reduced, but also increases year on year, so that you can start to tell that story back to your funder about the great work you're doing and how you're working to improve it, because you understand that client base. The other thing is that we've found for organisations that start down this journey, it really helps them tell their story in their annual report, as well as to particular philanthropic funders, because you can start to tell a fact-based story which is supplemented with real-life stories as well. So having both sides of, here's the data set of the clients that we're able to help, and here's the outcomes we're able to achieve, as well as with some real stories from real clients about this is the change, really helps you make a difference in terms of what you're able to attract to your organisation in terms of support. You can see here in this final chart, we're just looking at goal status and in terms of whether you've achieved, what goals you've achieved, up to half your goals, half or more. That's always, this was a challenging client group, or those that didn't even get a case management plan in place. And as usual, you can filter this by support date commencement, support date finish, as well as the underlying reason for closing the support period and process. So hopefully in showing you this Power BI toolset, what we've done is given you a sense of what's possible, as well as showing you what is a high level, easy to produce information dashboard around Power BI. And you can, of course, change the data set if you want to. There you go, I've just changed from a column chart, I think it was originally, through to a pie chart or donut. But it is very easy to add those visualizations, as well as to add the slices, as Anne showed you in the start of the presentation with this one here. I'm going to jump back to the presentation because what I wanted to do was just give you some tips for starting out. Because from our perspective, it's really easy to get started, but the harder thing is getting Power BI reports and dashboards ingrained within your organisation and really useful for people to make use of. So we've got 8 key tips here that we just wanted to talk through to make sure that everyone understood what we think you need to keep front of mind. And the first one is start using or learning Power BI, using a dashboard that you are familiar with and that is easy for you to access. E.g., it's not buried in some complex system that is really locked down and it's hard to get data out of. And that familiarity, like if you understand what all the data means and how staff enter the data and what it could mean to them, you will be far more successful in building useful reports and in understanding what's going on if you get some results that don't quite make sense to you when you see it. One of the things that you will, if you start down your Power BI journey, you'll encounter at some stage is that you'll produce a dashboard or a report, you'll show it to the management team or staff, and people will say to you, that's not true, that can't be right. And starting with a data set you're familiar with will help you to understand that, will help you to unpick it, and help you to understand, could it be that people just aren't bothering to enter the data accurately to start with? Could it be that you've interpreted different to the way that staff are interpreting? Or is there something else going on that you need to understand so that you can produce a dashboard that's really useful? So that's why our number 1 tip is start learning Power BI with something that you're familiar with, informational data you know and understand in a service delivery in a real world, not in an IT sense, and is also easy to access so that you don't get caught up in, oh my God, I can't get a refresh of the data, or it's all too hard. So that's big tip number 1. Number 2, success requires, like real success, requires buy-in from the executive and the management teams. In our experience, this is most effective and easy to get when you're solving a real problem for them that causes them difficulty and pain. You know, it's not some theoretical question that you're interested in. It's something that stressed managers without enough time are interested in and really want to solve. In our experience, the top three are things like, how am I going against my contract targets? Because holy moly, I missed them last year and I got money clawed back on me. Or I overshot 30% of them but didn't get any extra money for overshooting them. So that's often something that people find is really useful, so that you can manage and allocate staff and resources to meet those needs. The second is, how am I understanding the outcomes I achieve with my clients by demographic area, by client type, by location, by service type? So that's the second question that organisations are really keen to try and understand, getting a better handle on outcomes rather than just contract targets, because the two are not always the same. And the outcomes is a much deeper, more complex question. The third question that managers and executive are often interested in is, help me manage my workload or caseload for my staff. How many is too many? Which staff needs some additional assistance, whether that be a lower caseload or more supervision, or which clients actually cause or take more work and which clients take less work, and how do I understand that to balance my workload and my caseload? The other interesting question along that same line is, people often ask when they start to do this, so which cases are still open but there's been no activity for 4 months or more? Because starting to unpick that you then start to ask, well, why is it still open? What's the next step? Maybe there's some activity we need to do there as well. But understanding that workload, caseload question is the third key area that we find the executive management and staff really like to understand more effectively, because it can help them make a difference with a real world outcome. So number two, just to reiterate, it is success with Power BI requires buy-in from the executive and the management team. Think about, once you're comfortable with Power BI and you've got through point one, think about what real problems, or ask them directly, what real problems cause that difficulty, which if you help them answer, they would support you in your journey. Number three, this is the bad piece of news, and hopefully for the majority of organisations on the webinar, this may not be true, but in our experience, staff on the front line are really busy. Staff delivering services care more about clients than about data entry. And the result of that is, initially your data might not be perfect. So be aware of that. Make sure you don't overpromise that everything's going to be perfect on day one. Understand, is your data as good as it needs to be to deliver value? And develop a strategy and a monitoring/report system to fix the solution at the source, e.g. when the data is initially entered. Normally we find this one is a journey, all right? You can't all of a sudden go, now as of today, my data is clean and all my reports are going to be perfect. It takes time and cultural change to work. But engaging the executive and the management team, as well as staff, making the reports useful for staff as well, is critical to making sure that you get accurate reports that actually add value. But engaging people on that journey is what's really important there. Number four is, if you need resources, and the majority of organisations will at some stage in this journey, and those resources might be dollars, they might be expertise, or they might be access to staff or a commitment to clean up the data. You know, often we find that to get really good reports, you need to get the time of frontline managers that can design a report that will change behaviour. So whatever it is, if you need resources on the journey, think about when you want to ask for it and plan to ask for it at the right time. Get support for the program concept, prove that it can deliver some value, put the ask in to say, I need dollars, I need expertise, I need, you know, staff who are delivering services to have the time to clean up the data, or management to build some useful reports. Think about that and plan that in your journey. Number 5, if your systems or data is a mess, think carefully about how you navigate the likely pitfalls. Start with just one system or one data set. Don't try and do everything at once. But thinking that through so you don't overpromise and don't try and join everything together at once is really important to making sure you get those quick wins delivered in a reasonable time frame, rather than try and boil the ocean and never get anywhere and you don't get any outcome at all. Number 6, if you don't have access to your data, don't assume it will be simple. This is a really important one. We've been engaged in multiple occasions where there's a client and case management system that's hosted in the cloud, and when you try and get the data, you can't get the data out of it. So making sure that you've picked systems that, or if you are in the middle of choosing a client and case management system, make sure you can get your data out of it in a query approach, rather than just in a straight reports approach. Getting the data out and into an analytics tool is absolutely critical to being able to analyze it and join the data into multiple different data sources and make use out of it. 7, it's really easy to get lost in the analysis. Start with a hypothesis or a question. So, for instance, you heard Anne talking through that earlier. How do my outcomes vary by caseworker? How do my outcomes vary by location or by history? So start with the question, develop some reports to answer that question. And number 8, don't be afraid to ask for help. Everyone's on this journey and it takes time. Don't be afraid to ask for help. We're obviously more than happy to assist. The types of ways we normally help organisations is just by starting with that, let's develop a dashboard based on a data set you've got access to. If your data and systems are a mess, developing an information systems strategy to bring it together and clean it up over a period of time. Helping you think about how you best report on your activities or your contract targets or your outcomes. We still find it fascinating that contract targets often aren't held within your service delivery system. So reporting on that requires joining data from both your contract target source as well as your service delivery source. Or if you've already started on the journey, taking your analytics and business intelligence environment to the next level. I did want to stop and pause for questions and discussion. So I'm going to hand back to you, but I will make the comment as I just turn the video on so you can see us again, that Power BI is really, there is a mountain of free resources and tools available. Jump on the Power BI website, search YouTube for Power BI. There is a whole host of videos and toolkits that really help you get started if you're not familiar with it. Assuming you can do your analysis in Excel, it's very easy to transition that to Power BI, and particularly with working with this webinar. And the YouTube channel is fantastic as well. So Tina, I'll hand back to you for questions.
Thanks, Marcus. Thanks, Anne. We do have a question. It is it possible to do drill downs to the individual case/client?
Absolutely, yes, it is. If the data is in there, you can do drill downs to the individual case/client. You would need to ask yourself, do you want to do that? Because for obvious reasons about client confidentiality, or do you just hold the client identifier rather particular for client name and demographic details? But we've seen organisations make both decisions. Yes, they want to enable that drill down so that helps them clean the data. No, they don't. That's to be done in the client case management system.
Okay, that was the only question that we've had so far.
Too easy.
Yep.
Well, everyone, we really hope that you had found the webinar useful. There is our contact details. If you need any further information or advice, we're always happy to help. As is Tina, thank you so much for hosting the webinar. But we really hope that you get value out of the journey and you do start on the Power BI journey, because those organisations that go through the process have huge value in terms of how it can help them have even bigger impact from their efforts and their work.
Great. Thank you very much, Marcus and Anne, for presenting today. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. I hope you've all learned a lot from the presentation. If you do have any questions that come to mind later on or any feedback about the webinar, please send that through to events@connectingup.org and we'll answer those questions offline. You can also contact Marcus and Anne directly via the information on your screen. Don't forget that the recording will be available on our website very shortly and a link will be sent to you, so keep an eye out on your inbox. Again, thank you for being with us. Enjoy the rest of your day and we look forward to seeing you all next time. Thank you, Marcus. Thank you, Anne.
Thanks, Tina. See you, everyone.